Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Headmaster's Half-Term blog. It's Friday the 12th of February. Well, first of all, I'd like to say an enormous thank you. Thank you to my team of teaching and support staff. Thank you to you, the parents, and thank you to the pupils. Together, we have forged a really strong team and made the transition from learning in person at the school to home learning very, very seamless. I am absolutely assured that it's come at the cost, I am sure, of some frayed tempers at times, but I think all things considered, everybody has done a sterling job, and we go into a well-deserved half-term, I think, having, I'm sure, made really commensurate progress. And hopefully the government will allow us to return back to school in person on the 8th of March. We will just have to wait and see. In terms of the start of this week, there was a really lovely blanket of snow when I arrived at Kingswood House on Monday morning, set against the backdrop of a steely sky. It was almost like a metaphor, this blanket of white shrouding everything that was underneath, and yet sort of an ominous sky overhead. It really did serve up some fantastic photographs, but more importantly, it served up an enormous amount of fun. And I was really uplifted to hear the laughter from adults as well as children that snow can provide. And certainly my own garden, the playground here at the school, and I hope across your houses as well, you all really enjoyed making the most of that because it doesn't come around too often. But certainly if the newsletter is anything to go by, it looks as though you all absolutely took the opportunity to get out and get involved in the snow, and rightly so. Moving on, this week has been a real focus for us in terms of mental health, positive thinking and staying safe online. I'm very grateful to Ian Mitchell and Katie Timothy who put together a really useful pack of resources, and I hope that all of the teachers and yourselves at home have been availing yourself of those. Certainly there's never been a more appropriate time for us to try and think optimistically for the future, and the vaccination success does seem to give us light at the ever-increasing proximity at the end of that tunnel that I've talked about before. And I really hope that we're going to see a greater degree of normality in the summer. One of the examples I talked about in assembly this week was a man called Tom Brady, who is the quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Famously, he won his 7th Super Bowl last weekend and put in a virtuoso performance at the ripe old age of 43. Less well known is the fact that Tom Brady was completely written off by a scout at the start of his career who basically accused him of not being physical enough, of not having a very good throwing arm, of not being very strategic. And rather than sort of taking that to heart, he took it on the chin, and obviously the stellar career that he's enjoyed since has been down in no small part to his own feeling of self-worth and value, and rather than letting that criticism affect him, he redoubled his efforts and improved himself, and has now established himself as an all-time NFL legend. So the message really to the boys was, don't let adversity define you. Make sure that you always take the positives and think positively, because with that mindset you can achieve more than you truly believe is possible. We've also had a fantastic set of subject enrichment this half of term in music, DT, art and drama. I'm so grateful to all of the teachers, Mrs. Wraith, Mr. Bailey, Miss Foster, Mrs. Hawley, for their creative thinking, and thank you for supporting the ideas at home. They have sent out a video showcasing all of the work that has come their way, and as well as the photos and the write-ups in the newsletter, that video really is worth a watch. It was sent out by parent mail earlier on this morning, and I think again it will really lift your spirits, so please do have a look at that. And in the next half of term, Miss Black, Miss Patel, Mr. Barrett are very excited to unveil their plans for science enrichment. And I've had a sneak preview. I can honestly assure you that there are going to be multiple ways to get involved in that. So that is something else to whet your appetite for our return later in the month. And finally, we had a mention from George the poet, who you may or may not have heard of. but George the Poet sent a personal message to our Year 11 boys this week, urging them to keep up their spirits, and this was in response to an approach from Mrs. Wraith, because the boys had shown really great empathy and resilience, and if you want to find out more about that, it is in the newsletter. But a really great thing that George reached out to our boys, for whom I'm sure he will be a great role model. On to Mentions and Dispatches this week. There's a lot to get through, so forgive me for rushing slightly, but so much good news to share with you. Well done to Matt V, Maye and Raphael for their maths, to Jack Swallow for his music, to Zach Borner for his positive attitude, Gregory Chung for always asking for help if he gets stuck on a question, which probably isn't very often because he's quite bright. Well done to Ben Scudamore for his work on possessive apostrophes, to Seb Phillips for his hard work in music, and Fraser Smith also, to Edward Bishop for working hard in all of his subjects and helping at home with the washing up, to Max Kenner for his hard work during lockdown, George Pritchard for being super organised and really impeccably behaved in teams, Nathaniel John, who's done really well learning at school, particularly with his French. Well done to all of 6L from Mrs. Linley, especially Henry Rusco and Tristan Bush for their skills and talents, Rex Treadwell for his Spanish, Jackson Worth for having a really lovely smile, George Dyson and Tristan Bush for great progress in computer science, Henry Rusco and Darren Usa for their music. Well done to Kieran Schmitz for his help with one of the French lessons with Madame Swift, to Hussein Barner, who's worked really hard in the last week or two and produced some excellent work in English and French, to Adam Grattan, Kevin Tan and Alex Wang, and James Miller also for being involved and asking insightful questions in mathematics, to Benji Schumacher, Jack Saville, Digby Harris and Harry Peters for their work and progress in computer science from Mrs. Webb, Alex Wang for his work in music, and Harry Peters for really being well organised in his music and sending home regular work into school. Mr. Barrett was very pleased to receive a note from Mrs. Hornstetter commending his entire class for their work in history, to Jasper Wong for being prompt to form time and registration, Ian Shafiq for being punctual, Connor Towers and Arlo Saywell for attempting GCSE level questions and coping really well with them from Mrs. Linley, to Bo Clark for his fantastic headdress, Connor Towers, Theo Walker as well. Mrs. Wraith is really pleased with those. To Josh Isles and Priyank Prasanth for really pushing themselves with their industry and their work. Jasper Wong for working very steadily, not scared to take on a new challenge with his work. And Arlo Saywell for an all-round excellent attitude to learning from Miss Patel. And Max Rocheron for being super organised in music and letting Miss Foster know that the page numbers didn't match the class workbook in advance of a lesson, showing how organised he was. Well done, Max. Joel Mokarates created a good impression by being polite, and Josh Isles has been thinking about interesting questions for form time to generate discussion. Jonathan Barnes and Dylan Bishop, great work in computer science. Josh Isles, another nomination for his work in industry and music. Will Harvison and Michael Sargis for great positivity in tutor periods. Joe Huang and Charlie Wren for their great efforts with Sankey diagrams and science. Will Harvison has caught up classwork he missed to a very high standard. Mrs. Hornstetter was pleased with you. Emir Osdorici, well done for your attainment this term from Mr. Sikdeo. Joe Huang nominated by Mrs. Webb for computer science, and Krishan Idris and Sergio Aras Hefield for their work in music. Into year 8, Alex Hill created a great impression in history. He missed the lesson due to feeling unwell, but then caught up all of the work to a fine standard. Oscar Davino and Alex Hill have both got French commendations. Rui Fitzpatrick has been nominated for a great effort by Madame Taylor over lockdown. Daniel Pepper and Yvonne Tutai have done some great Hegarty maths. And Alex Hill, another nomination for you for music. Well done, Stuart Coleman, Tarani, Jack Chamberlain and Ben Holmes, commendations in French. Tarani again and Tobias Van Hennigan for great doorway calculations in maths. Archie Spick and Jack Chamberlain for unravelling the mysteries of mini cheddars. Well, Mr. Barrett, you might need to unpick that one with me, but it sounds like my kind of experiment. Well done to all of 8T and 8L from Miss Patel. Ben Choi, Stuart Coleman, Owen Courtney, Lucas Cressy, Mikey Fitzgibbon and Max Horsting have all done good work on binary addition and computer science from Mrs. Webb. Stuart Coleman, your third nomination this week, Stuart. And Mikey Fitzgibbon, well done for your intent and focus in music. Stuart, well done. Great week from you. 3 nominations. Fantastic work. Into year 9, Ted Reed, great effort and attitude from Mr. Hendry. Will Hamilton, well done for great enthusiasm from Miss Black. Inan Abdul, well done for online French. Inan again and Jack Bunyar-Ames for completing a sound compression extension task in full and computer science. Ted Reed, Zach Alabane and Max Garrett, well done as well from Mrs. Webb. And Jack would like to be nominated by Miss Foster again for being the first to say hello in music lessons and really brightens up her Wednesday. So well done, Jack. Well done to Folu, who produced a wonderful rendition of Walking in the Air on his cello for the concert last week from Mr. Twinley. And Ali Al-Rabai has been busy playing football in the garden and apparently scored a couple of screamers past his poor dad in goal in the garden recently. Well done to both Year 9 classes for your work in history about the evacuation of children during the Second World War, where you've demonstrated really strong analysis skills from sources, but also, very importantly, some real empathy for the plight of others. Pete Duncan has a nomination for his work in physics from Miss Patel. Anthony Richard Miernick, well done for your work in computer science, and Alfred Lewis likewise. And Marcus Glenn for writing a great music composition. Well done to Ryan Luneman, Hugo Davis and Ollie Savage, who did really well in a recent chemistry assessment. Ollie Savage, another nomination for you, 13 house points for your maths this week. Mrs. Linley wonders if that's some kind of a record. Hugo Davis scored an incredible grade 9, that's an A double star in his latest chemistry assessment from Miss Patel. Ryan Luneman not far behind with a grade 8, which is an A star equivalent, and he's really increased his confidence. Well done, Ryan. Ollie Savage, your third nomination, Ollie. Wow, what a week. And Sam Slaney, both making good progress in science. Cameron Allenby and Harry Richardson for their work in respiration and exercise from Miss Patel. Max Mitchell-Nesbitt in Year 10 for a great vocal contribution to the Tea Time concert last week. And Angelo Cooper for great work in romantic poetry from Mr. March. Well done to Eddie Monk and Josh Johns in Year 11, who have been really motivated with their exercise. A really good role model, says Mr. Bailey. Josh Johns again and Maddie Hill really impressed Mrs. Lindley with their understanding of money problems, simple interest and compound interest depreciation. So some kind of entrepreneurial career beckons boys, perhaps. Charlie Thompson and Arad Rezavandi for pleasing progress in English from Mr. March. Harry Griffiths and Jazab Ahmed for progress in English. Alex Homewood for a marked improvement in his mathematics. Theo Byrne, well done to you for your performance on the electric guitar last week. And Mr. Sickday, Mrs. Wraith and Mr. Bailey would like to say well done to all of the Year 11s. Not only have you been very good company in the catch-up form time at the end of the day, but you've also maintained momentum during a very uncertain period of time over half-term, and for that you deserve to be richly commended, and I echo those sentiments entirely. So an awful lot of great work is going on at Kingswood House, and leading into half-term, it means we should all be entering into half-term, firstly with the idea of keeping away from screens as much as we can, and secondly spending some quality time, getting some rest, and spending time with our loved ones and with our friends as much as possible in the outdoors and getting some fresh air, so that when we return, we are reinvigorated and ready for a busy lead-in up to the end of term. A half of term which may yet yield a return to school, potentially phased for all of you, I hope, before the end of term for some much needed interface with us, and we are very much looking forward to that day. In the meantime, I wish all of our Chinese families and staff a very happy Chinese New Year. It is the Year of the Ox today, and the Year of the Ox, as I understand it, is synonymous with two very important values. The first is enterprise or endeavour, so the value of hard work, and the second is serenity, which is peace and calm and tranquility. And honestly, we are both in need of those. They are extremely apt. So let's make the most of them, because the next Year of the Ox will not come around until 2033, which is some way off. Have a great half of term, everybody.